So recently, Clash Royale is added the Ronin card. I'm fairly certain that you should already know what that is and what that does and what its effects are. And it was advertised along the line of Mega Knight crying or something. And this comes and this coincides as Clash Royale has been talking about. They made that ad about the heads rolling, and so they're in this mood of responding to user complaint, and I assume here they're responding to the complaints of people against the Mega Knight, which, in my opinion, is highly unwarranted because there are already many good counters to the Mega Knight. Three off the top of my head are Knight, Valkyrie, and Mini Pekka. All three of these not only counter it, but they're also much cheaper than the Mega Knight, which means maybe if the Mega Knight isn't alone, you should be able to easily defeat whatever accompanies it, assuming you haven't been outcycled or not in an elixir hole relative to your opponent, which is both circumstances that are dependent upon the player. Now, what makes the Ronin special is that it turns the weakness of the sort of powerful melee troop that has high HP and high damage against itself, which I perceive as different to the ways other things are countered. Very rarely other cards turn the defeat cards not by their own virtue of their own qualities and characters, but by inverting the strength of the enemy card among itself. An example of this would be Knight, but that is rather balanced because it's an ability that it can be activated by the player and is be deployed tactically, can be foreseen. You can avoid it. You can outlast the ability and such things such as that nature. And it's pretty only for a few seconds. I'm over yapping about that. But as I elaborate here, my problem is that if you counter a card in this way that is too fundamental and does not derive from the same way in which the card is weak. For example, I enlist here that what makes the Skarmy strong against the Pekka is the same thing that makes it weak to its counter. Then you defeat the triangularity and you, in a sense, make a counter that is too hard, in a sense, but also isn't as counterable itself in a way that doesn't create a triangularity. I note that the things that the Ronin counters are also countered by counters to the Ronin, and the things the Ronin counters don't counter things that counter the Ronin, because they're also countered by it. And I note in a comment prior to this that if you have these molecular hard counters, then within the match the triangularity is weaker. Now, of course, there are still cards that are triangular that counter other cards, obviously, but that makes it more about deck selection. And this is what I bring up here, and I will mention again, it's fundamentally the issue. And back to the original complaint. This goes back to the original complaint and a fundamental misunderstanding. Mega Knight is a card that people have a lot of complaints about being a brain dead card, despite the fact that it is counterable. And what this demonstrates is that being a brain dead card, no card is truly brain dead, so to say. Now, there's sometimes going to be balance issues, which isn't the case here, but a card is not brain dead in and of itself. And the fact that the card can be considered brain dead and abused, of course, cards can be over level, but that's people still have complaints about Mega Knights in a certain tiers when it's on the same rank. But it is not the character of the card itself that makes it brain dead. First of all, obviously, value is sort of ordinal, and people compare things relatively to each other, but also it is relative to each other and on its effect on the opposing player. The reason Mega Knight is like this is because people at the arenas where it's generally, aside from the overlap, it's good to overlevel. People at the arenas where it's abused are generally stupid. And that is why it is effective as it is at that level. Because they're not able to counter it, even though it's a very easily counterable card. So, a card that can say being brain dead can not be brain dead in and of itself. Now, it could say that, well, a game has to be played. So if a game plays out an aspect plays out nature where it does result in being brain dead, can we blame the card? And in this case, the answer is still no, due to how easy it is to counter, and due to the fact that this is inherently a low skill level, low mid skill level things. The thing is that again, it is the player that makes the card brain dead. It is brain dead players that make brain dead cards. And the thing is, you can't kill people who are brain dead. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about cards being relative to another. There will always be brain dead players. There will always be stupid players. And this is often more of a problem in the lower, stupider ranks. And that's not really something you can change, because it is the nature of the player that interacts with the cards in a way, even if that card is balanced. And getting back to cards being valued relatively to another, if you kill the card that is brain dead and make it underbalanced, what you do is relatively increase the value of the cards that are unlike it, in its nature. The Ronin devalues high HP, high damage cards that are melee, of course. Well, inversely, not only does it make you want to avoid those characteristics, but the Ronin itself is weak to the cards with the opposite characteristics, which brings us back to this triangle. Now, of course, I list an example to where it is. I don't know why I was talking about this knight. The Ronin easily counters the knight, so I'm fucking yapping in terms of that. Well, we can say MK Skarmy Ronin. That's a good example. Or let's say we do Pekka Ronin Skarmy, or do Boss Bandit Ronin Skarmy. That what we have is Skarmy counters 2 cards, Ronin counters 1, Boss Bandit or Pekka counters 0. And so what we see in this equation is that we've totally valued the opposite kind of cards, and we've made the other cards way more valuable relative to the other cards, because cards are relative to each other based on the effect that they have. And what you see in this is that fundamentally there will always be, maybe more or less, there will be a meta in terms of the overall balance, but especially in terms of lower tiers, what is effective against players with more gaps. There must always be, among brain dead players in brain dead arenas, brain dead decks, and all you do is change the relative evaluation of cards against each other to a player who fully utilizes the value of each card. Balanced usually creates diversity, but to a player who is not, then it is something that is much more. There are some cards that brain dead players use more often, and this is the problem, but that's fundamental to the nature of brain dead players. I hope that point got across. Frankly, I don't know if they can delete this card. Because now they've put it out and they've gotten money over this, and if they take it back, then it might hurt the perception of people who are going to buy cards later. Or I heard it might be free, or to get cards later, because they might think it might be pulled back. And I don't know about the legality of deleting an item that people have paid for. I'm generally assuming it might be legal, might be not. But hopefully they nuke this into the dust. Hopefully they frankly rework the card into maybe a way where it's balanced in a way I didn't perceive. But yeah, I think I communicated my point here, but I was really way too rambly and indirect about it. Alright, bye.